Welcome back to the Deep Discog Dive. A new year means new changes, and I myself have moved into a new home, a Sony Trinitron TV. Analysts are always saying that the dream of millennial home ownership is dying. Well, do their homes have aperture grille technology? I'm really liking this place so far. I hope nothing bad happens to it. Björk, what are you doing now? Today, we're talking about Björk. Let's dive in.
My name is Björk, and your television is just about to explode!
We begin this story in Reykjavik, Iceland. In November 1965, Björk Guðmundsdóttir was born. Also, just so we're all on the same page about this, an umlaut over the O means that you pronounce the O through the lips of a U. Her name is Björk, like beef Björky, not Björk like Björk chops. She grew up primarily with her activist mother, and by the age of 6, she joined a school for music, studying classical piano and flute. A recording of Björk singing the Tina Charles song I Love to Love at a school recital was heavily played on Icelandic radio, and by the age of 11, she had signed to a record label and was hard at work on her debut album. In December 1977, Björk released her self-titled album. And it's just so adorable! Most of it is covers sung in Icelandic, including renditions of the Beatles' Fool on the Hill, Stevie Wonder's Your Kiss is Sweet, and Edgar Winter's Altamira. That said, there is one original tune by Björk, an instrumental tribute to Johannes Karaval with Björk on the recorder. Here's the thing though, while this is Björk's first album, is it really? She made it as a wee lass, it doesn't sound like anything Björk would go on to do, and she herself doesn't even consider this the start of her discography. Saying this is Björk's first album is like saying, I'll see you next year right before the new year starts. Yeah, you're right, but God, do you have to be so annoying about it? That's why this record is number 0. If you're just dying to hear a young Björk sing Stevie Wonder and Beatles covers, then here you go, I guess. Your prayers have been answered. This first record only shipped about 7,000 copies, so it's a pretty rare find in any physical condition. It's also not available on streaming, but thankfully there's a full rip of it on YouTube. Links in the description. The record was successful enough for Björk to get a new piano for future songwriting, and oh, was she about to do a ton of that. The next 16 years would see Björk integrating herself further into the Icelandic music scene, joining and starting different bands with others in the post-punk community. There was Spit and Snot first, an all-girl punk band. Then in 1980, not only did she graduate from her music school, she also joined 2 other groups, Jam 80 and Exodus, the latter being a jazz fusion group. In 1982, she started Tapi Tikaras, which in English translates to Cork the Bitch's Ass. That group yielded 1 EP and 1 album. In 1983, Björk met guitarist Thor Eldon and poet Sjón. Both were members of an art collective called Medulla that Björk joined, plus the trio also formed a group called Raka Raka Drum. And on top of that, Björk joined a supergroup of Icelandic musicians that was assembled to play on the last episode of a popular radio show. The band continued playing after that show under the name Kukl. Björk's time with this band yielded a 2-month tour and 2 albums under Crass Records, the label started by pioneering punk band Crass. Now, all of that was simple and easy to understand, but what happens next is kinda complicated. After Kukl broke up in 1986, former bandmates of Björk's started a new arts collective. Other Icelandic creatives, including some from Kukl, joined this collective, and they decided to start a band to make some money. Their name was Thukl, but they were credited as Kukl, which is the name of the band from before that didn't exist anymore. A few shows later, and the band started referring to themselves as Sykulmolnir, which translates to sugar cubes, and thus the Sugar Cubes were born. Oh, and also a child, I guess. Björk's first son with Thor Eldon was born the same day that the Sugar Cubes officially formed. She and Thor would later divorce, but they still worked together in the Sugar Cubes. And work together in the Sugar Cubes they did. Chances are, out of all the bands I've just named, the Sugar Cubes is the one you're most likely already familiar with. Their 1988 debut album, Life's Too Good, is their most famous and their most best. For real, it's a genuinely great Icelandic pop rock record. Oh, and one more extra record. In 1990, Björk collaborated with jazz trio Guðmundar Ingolfssonar for Gling Glow. It's chock full of jazz standards, not required listening, but I'm too scared to imagine a world without it. The Sugar Cubes got a load of press from Life's Too Good, including an appearance on SNL. However, the second album wasn't as successful, and by the time the third released, Björk had already mentally checked out of the group. She was, instead, focused on her own music. So by the time the third Sugar Cubes album was in the works, Björk was already planning her next move. She shipped over to London and immersed herself into the city's dance scene. Arguably her first major step into the dance pool was Oops, her collab with British group 808 State. This song would also be the first collab between her and 808 member Graham Massey. When it came time to record her songs, Björk enlisted Nelly Hooper, member of acclaimed trip-hop outfit Massive Attack, to produce. And in July 1993, Björk made her proper debut with Debut. Even though real heads will say this isn't technically her debut, Björk said the title actually reflects how this album represents the start of something new. It still retains the experience and confidence of her work with prior bands, but the production is driven by electronic beats and found audio samples, each one feeling perfectly placed in the mix. Take lead single Human Behavior. Its instrumental is a ramshackle collection of production held together by an upright bass. You want to know my favorite part of this instrumental? It's this part of the beat. I'm telling you, that part just gets so stuck in my head, just like ba-ba-bow. Try singing along next time you listen to this song, it's fun. In contrast to the meticulousness of the production though, Björk's vocal style is far more fluid. The first thing you have to realize is that Björk does not give a damn about traditional vocalist conventions like tempo and rhythm. You see a measure, Björk sees a prison. Björk's melodies have this unpredictable whimsicality to them, like she's finding them in real time as she sings. And that contrast between the freeform and the precise is not only the core of what makes Debut so engaging, but it's the core of what will make Björk as an artist so captivating overall. Human Behavior demonstrates that well, as do the other singles Venus is a Boy and Violently Happy. There's more to life than this pulses with a classic 90s dance beat, then abruptly filters out as if Björk is leaving the dance floor to use the bathroom, and it turns out it sounds like that because it's literally what happened. This track was partially recorded in the bathroom of a London club. Big Time Sensuality sounds like a game show theme from an alien world, and Closer, the anchor song, is just Björk singing over a saxophone group, and it sounds like a sea shanty by Moon Man. You know, most times when I cover debut albums, I gotta make disclaimers like, it's not the artist's best, but it's their start, so that's worth keeping in mind. I don't have to do that here. Debut displays an artist that has arrived fully formed. If this is what she can do with her first album, and we've got 9 more mainline albums to go, I'm terrified. Not only was Debut very well received, and not only did it get her 5 top 40 singles in the UK, and not only did it establish Björk as her own creative entity, but it helped to popularize and make serious to the general public the sounds of 90s dance music. Debut got Björk nominated at the 1994 Brit Awards, where she also did a great cover of I Can't Get No Satisfaction with PJ Harvey. Her work also led her to co-write a song for Madonna, 1994's Bedtime Story. I wish I had more of a story about this to share, but Björk never actually met Madonna and later said that she did it more for her friend.
No offense to Madonna, but I was kind of more doing it as a present to my friend.
For Debut's follow-up, Björk enlisted Nelly once again, along with trip-hop producer Tricky and Graham Massey of 808 State. She also got lyric writing help from her old bandmate, Sean. Oh, and one other fun side story, towards the start of making this new record, Björk set up shop in Nassau and sang to the sea by running out her mic cord to a beach. It really is nature's ADC. In June 1995, Björk released Post. You should never judge a book by its cover, but I will now judge these 2 albums by their covers. Look at Debuts again. It's monotone, simplistic, almost introverted. Post could not be any more different. It's bombastic with its use of color, and it conveys a sense of motion with that little bit of radial blur. The music within Post reflects that difference. It's still meticulous and detail-driven, but it's also louder, more confident, without veering into needless aggression. Opener Army of Me is an exemplary example, written with Graham about Björk's deadbeat brother so he'd get off his butt. Those pummeling drums mixed with that fuzzed out bass line, and laid on top is this very unnerving melody by Björk. And oh, is that a familiar snare I hear? Björk, you're trying to win me over, aren't you? What's next? You're gonna sample the snare from One Headlight? Post continues to surprise as it goes on. Immediately after Army of Me, there's Hyper Ballad, which builds with skittering percussion and this gorgeous performance by Björk, depicting a balance between giving pieces of yourself to a loved one without fully giving yourself away. Possibly maybe softly lumbers like a broken down machine, I Miss You convinces you to get out on the dance floor, then ambushes you with a big band horn section. Oh, and then there's this. Your senses have not left you. Halfway through Post, Björk drops a rendition of a German big band tune. It's a sonic whiplash that I cannot help but love, especially on the chorus where she goes, wow! You might also be noticing by now these music videos, and how they are incredibly normal. This happened to my buddy Dave once. In keeping with her sonic experimentation, Björk's music videos are, and will continue to be, wild, offering a memorable take on her music and a fertile ground for up-and-coming directors. Many of her early videos were directed by Michel Gondry, and It's Oh So Quiet specifically was directed by Spike Jonze. Post is another great album, one that stands right next to Debut while also adding new dimensions to Björk's artistry. Post raked in success just as much as Debut did, but it also gave Björk a heaping helping of problems. To start, the Army of Me music video was banned from MTV due to its depiction of a museum bombing shortly after a real-world bombing. Conflict over a sample on Possibly Maybe got Björk and co prepared to destroy 10,000 copies of the album, though it was cleared in time. And of course, Björk's rising star meant more attention from tabloids and more stress from touring. It was truly a lot for any person to handle. Oh, so that's what an Army of Me looks like. Some background on this. The woman whom Björk is going Donkey Kong Jungle Beat mode on had allegedly been harassing her and her son for days leading up to this visit in Bangkok. Still, Björk did later apologize for going off the handle. The final cherry on top of this garbage sundae was, right as sessions began for her third album, a deranged fan mailed Björk a sulfuric acid bomb, then took his own life. Thankfully, the bomb was intercepted by police before it could get to her. I'm not going to get into that situation any further because the details don't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but it was the tipping point for Björk to make a change. To escape basically everything, Björk set up shop in her tour drummer studio in Malaga, Spain. Instead of Nelly Hooper, Björk brought in producers such as Howie B, Guy Sigsworth, and Mark Bell from LFO. This new album was also going to feature production from the Wu-Tang Clan at one point, but they got too busy with Wu-Tang Forever. As the world waited patiently for this new album, we did get Telegram, a remix album for Post in November 1996. Telegram was conceived of and framed as a record independent of Post, though I do believe it's not crucial for your Björk experience unless you just love Post. Special shout out though to the great rendition of Hyperballad with the Brodsky Quartet. Björk released Homogenic in September 1997. Special shout out to the cover. I'm glad to see how that girl from the PlayStation 3 ad got her start. The title is not only a reference to its attempts at capturing her homeland, but also a more cohesive sound.
Because it's one flavor. It's just me now, here. And it's gonna be, instead of like all these different instruments, it's just gonna be beats, strings, and voice.
If Post caught attention through its wild shifts and turns, Homogenic does it through coalescing these different threads into something so uniform. The beats and voice are still just as great as ever, while the strings were provided by the Icelandic string octet, and they lend a newfound drama to any track they appear on. Yoga. I love this song, I love this song, I love this song! Björk once described it as the fiercest love song she had ever written, and that pure emotion is everywhere here. The gorgeous strings, the instantly memorable melody, the distorted drums entering partway through. This is the first perfect song by Björk, in my opinion. Unravel spends 3 minutes gorgeously, disentangling a splendid combo of voice, strings, woodwind, and orchestra. And if that's not enough, Mr. Radiohead himself, Tom York, once said this was his favorite song. Bachelorette has lyrics written by Sean, and they're so dramatic and epic, and when you pair them with this operatic melody by Björk, I'm just like,
I've started to diversify my portfolio.
Whether it's the ethereal closer All Is Full of Love, the unnerving dissonance of Hunter or Pluto, or that one really funny line on Alarm Call, what even is this album? I know we're only 3 albums in so far, but please, if you only listen to one of these albums, make it Homogenic. There's an old famous expression that goes, woo! Homogenic was hailed as the 3rd straight home run for Björk.
I am grateful grapefruit.
It was around this time that she began working on her first major film, not just writing music, but acting. 2000 saw the release of Lars von Trier's musical Dancer in the Dark, and boy, this movie is sad. Oh, wow. Jesus Christ. But the soundtrack, Selma Songs, is good, and Björk's acting is excellent. She later said that her performance was so emotionally taxing and her relationship with Von Trier so frustrating that she vowed to never act again. But she earned plenty of acclaim, including the Best Actress prize at the 2001 Cannes Film Festival and a Best Original Song nod for I've Seen It All at the Oscars. If this was really her last acting performance, then it was a real swan song. It's also worth mentioning that in 2017, as many other similar stories were coming to light, Björk shared her own story of sexual harassment from an unnamed director, and many people put 2 and 2 together to equal Lars von Trier. Just so you know. Anyway, during the making of Dancer is when Björk's 4th album began taking shape. As a respite from filming, this new music took on feelings of intimacy and domesticity. What might have been influencing that direction is Björk's new relationship with New York director Matthew Barney, plus the ongoing fallout from Dancer in the Dark. And in August 2001, Björk released her 4th album, Vespertine. If there's one buzzword you might hear when it comes to this album, it's microbeats. That's in reference to how the beats were produced using everyday sounds that would be found around a home. Steps on a floor, a deck of cards, patting your hand on the Garfield couch. These production decisions lend themselves well to the album's lyrical focus, relationships, and giving pieces of yourself to another. It's kind of an album-length exploration of what Hyperballad was depicting. You might then think that Vespertine sounds warm and welcoming, and it does, but not how you would expect. Common words used to describe the sound are icy, frozen, cold. It's like cozying up with your partner during a blizzard. Opener Hidden Place. You've got this captivating instrumental that goes... Then Björk starts singing about going to somewhere secluded with a loved one while his choir swoops and glides around. It's Not Up to You shows Björk not trying to control everything around her. Pagan Poetry finds Björk conflicted about the things she wants in a relationship. Cocoon has Björk in a moment of intimacy with her partner with metaphors that I cannot explain fully here because my mother is probably watching. Vespertine continues on the cohesion train Homogenic first started while taking enough steps forward to hit yet another home run. How does she do it? The year after Vespertine, Björk had her 2nd child, a daughter, with Matthew. But her pregnancy prevented her from recording Gollum's song for the soundtrack for Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers. What's more important, Björk, your newborn child or a funny little dude? Even though we didn't get that song recorded by her, we got a ton of Björk-related releases in 2002. There was her first greatest hits collection, the Family Tree box set. Most exciting to me personally is the Live box set, which compiled live recordings for every album so far. Each compilation is on streaming now too. While we were getting our faces stuffed with Björk bonuses, she was working on another record. August 2004 was when we got our first tastes of it, specifically a performance of new song Oceania at the 2004 Summer Olympics. And right at the end of the month, Medulla was released. I tried to keep this a secret for as long as I could, but it's finally time to expose Björk for who she truly is. An a cappella nerd. Medulla is Björk's vocal album. Just about every sound on this album was made with the human voice. And I think that's pretty rad. Don't worry now, this isn't Björk doing a set at the ICCA finals or doing the cup song. Instead, Björk uses the voice as the jumping off point for an album that feels of the earth. It calls back to vocalized traditions from throughout history. Heck, its title is even a reference to a core part of the brainstem, the part that controls, breathing and heart rate. I actually did a full video on Medulla way back in 2019. On one hand, I'm very proud of that video and its unconventional structure. On the other hand, I'm embarrassed by anything I've done over a year ago, so watch at your own peril. Not to mention, the list of collaborators this time is the most varied so far. There's Tuvan throat singer Tanya Tagaq, Faith No More frontman Mike Patton, beatboxers Razel and Dokaka, but the wildest collab unfortunately did not get to happen due to scheduling. Beyoncé was going to be on this. To this day, I still do not know what that would have sounded like. Where Is the Line and Pleasure Is All Mine both create this ominous tone, distant choir vocals contrasted by the immediate presence of Razel's beatboxing. The former was actually written about the same brother who inspired Army of Me. Buddy, come on, what are you doing to get 2 songs written about you? And whatever it is, can you keep doing it? Who Is It keeps a bit of the ominous underbelly, but the chorus, to me, is one of Björk's poppiest. Album closer Triumph of a Heart is just a straight-up bop, featuring Dokaka on the... Yeah, he's on the... The album even takes more experimental detours, like Björk's solo performance on Show Me Forgiveness, the choir piece Vulnicura, or Ancestors, which shines a bright spotlight on Tanya Tagaq. The whole a cappella thing might turn you off at first, but please give this one a listen. I think Medulla stands up just fine alongside the past 4 albums. Medulla's praise was a bit less immediate than the past 4 albums, though it was still very well received. But as critics were drawing their opinions, Björk was drawing restraint. 9. Björk composed the soundtrack for Matthew Barney's 2005 film Drawing Restraint 9. Since the film is a Japanese love story, the score takes heavy inspiration from Japanese music and instruments. I wish I could tell you how the movie is, but it's unfortunately not available anywhere unless you're willing to do naughty things. The soundtrack is available though. I most enjoyed the opener with Will Oldham on vocals. Speaking of films, Björk did a bit of voice acting for the 2006 animated film Anna and the Moods.
Where is that girl?
This is terrifying. Is this the Klasky Shupo mascot rising from their ancient tomb to enact their biblical revenge on us all? Björk's 6th album was teased in early 2007, and the main takeaway was that this would be Björk having fun. Some writers even took this as a sign that she was going pop, though that might have been helped by the news that this album would be produced, in part, by Timbaland. Timbaland's connection to Björk isn't as odd as you might first think. He had been a big fan of hers for a while. He even sampled Yoga on an old Missy Elliott song.
Coming round the corner. You think you tough, then let me see what you wanna.
In May 2007, Björk released Volta. Oh, I can't wait for future sex Björk sounds. Björk it to me. Are you that some Björky? Björk miscuous. Sorry, it's just, I'm looking at the album credits and I forgot Timbaland isn't on this as much as I remembered. He only produces 2 tracks, Earth Intruders and Innocence. Both are good, though a part of me wishes his beats went a bit further. Basically, I want to hear sexy Björk. Is that so wrong? I guess this could also be framed as Timbaland meeting Björk where she was and not overexerting his own sound onto her. But that's also the vibe for the rest of the record, you know? I hear a song and it's good, but either it doesn't hook me completely or there's like one thing that had it been changed would have made me love the song. The Dull Flame of Desire, for instance, is a duet with Anoni. The chord progression is great, both singers sound great, and it's just a minute or so too long for me. Declare Independence has this wild pummeling outro, but again, the whole song runs long. Plus, while the song ends at a 10, it begins at like an 8. I would have loved a more drastic change in dynamics. I don't have much to say about any other song, but the production this time is still as sharp as ever. I enjoyed the greater emphasis on brass instruments, and some of the songs also feature samples from Drawing Restraint 9. Volta still packs the same great Björk production, but the core songs underneath just don't do it for me as much this time. Commercially, Volta did quite well. It remains Björk's highest charting album in the US. Critically, though, people still liked it. It was a good album. It just didn't have the usual rapturous reception. Björk soon turned her focus to the tour for Volta, but during this time, another side of her became visible. It was around this time when she started showing her public support for environmental causes. She performed with Sigur Rós in 2008 to raise awareness of Iceland's aluminum melting plants. In June 2010, she worked with Dirty Projectors on the EP Mount Wittenberg Orca. This is a fun little EP, very vocal driven, and Björk fits well with then rising stars Dirty Projectors. The proceeds from the EP went to a National Geographic charity for marine conservation. In September 2010, she released a tie-in song for Moomins and the Comet Chase. This is adorable. It was later released as a single to benefit the victims of the floods in Pakistan. But in late 2010, she teased a new album. Then in early 2011, she wrote an instrumental piece for the app Solar System. And then in June 2011, she kicked off a world tour. In October 2011, we got Biophilia. Okay, so here's the thing. Biophilia is a lot. It's more a lot than any other Björk record before it because there is so much more to it than the record. It was so much a lot that, to paraphrase a line from the early 2010s, There was an app for it. Biophilia launched with an app that allowed users to interact with each song in some way. Maybe it was tilting your device to fly through tunnels representing different parts of the song, or it was automating musical patterns. It also had an intro narrated by David Attenborough, who was apparently Björk's biggest musical inspiration? That's not so weird. My main YouTube inspiration is the New York City Pizza Rat. In tandem with the apps, there were also instruments created specifically for the album. This fed into Björk's larger plan for educational workshops. The tour for Biophilia also included opportunities for children aged 10 through 12 to engage with the apps and instruments. But what might surprise you is that buried underneath the initiatives and programs is an album of music. Biophilia is... it's good. It is good. I think out of all the albums I'm re-listening to for this dive, this one has grown on me the most, but there's a part of me that feels like some of this album was made with the extracurriculars as the focus and not the other way around. There are great songs for sure. Crystalline is built off a disquieting Gamalist part, but blows the door off in the last minute with wild breakbeat drums. Dark Matter is equally unsettling with just Björk and an organ. It also apparently doesn't have a time signature. I told you it was prison. And other tracks like Thunderbolt, Opener Moon, Virus, and Cosmogony feel like they're breaking new instrumental ground for Björk. The rest I can still get down with, but it can come off as too piecemeal, too limited. Again, it feels like some of these songs were written for an app first. Biophilia is an album that I 100% respect and admire, and while it's not one that I revisit as often as, say, Homogenic, it is still worth your time. And if you do end up enjoying this one, I highly recommend checking out the app for the album, which is still up on the Apple App Store. For any fan of Biophilia, this is an absolute must-buy. Not only does it come with the aforementioned interactive experiences, but you also get visual scores and lyrics for each song. Very cool stuff. At the time, Biophilia mirrored Volta in its "This new Björk album is good because if it isn't, then society will collapse" response. The previously mentioned world tour ran until September 2013, though a few shows in 2012 had to be cancelled due to vocal node surgery. November 2012 saw the release of the Bastards remix album. I feel the same way about this as I did about Telegram, a neat bonus if you love the album it's based on, but not crucial if you don't. But it does feature some big names like Hudson Mohawk, These New Puritans, and look! Death Grips! Death Grips is on the album! The Death Grips love was a much deeper web than you might think. The first side of their double album, The Powers That Be, was made from processed vocal samples of Björk. 2013 was when Björk met David Attenborough, and they even made a whole TV special called When Björk Met Attenborough. This special came from the initial plan for a full documentary for Biophilia, which did not come to be. It's a nice way to understand both people more, and it is on YouTube if you want to watch. Finally, to wrap up the Biophilia era, 2014 saw the release of Biophilia Live, a full concert movie and live album. A whole new album was announced on January 14th, 2015, with no release date set, but it was soon revealed that it would have an unconventional rollout like Biophilia. For starters, it was leaked in full 4 days after it was announced. Her mind. So 2 days after the leak, Björk released Vulnicura on iTunes with a physical version coming later in 2015. So you press play on your newly purchased digital copy of Vulnicura only to find that it is her breakup album. Björk and Matthew Barney split around September 2013, and Vulnicura is almost entirely focused on that split. It's pretty dark in its tone compared to the past few records, and it's primarily produced with Arca, plus some help from the Hawks and Cloak. But the producing parties don't tell the full story of Vulnicura. Arguably, the biggest player on here is the strings. Past Björk albums have not been lacking in strings representation, but Vulnicura makes them feel as much of a primary character as Björk herself. Stone Milker sets the stage beautifully. What a gorgeous opener this one is. Björk sings about trying to get emotions out of a stoic partner, and the strings hit you with that main melodic motif. I don't think a Björk album opener has gently caressed my socks off this much since Hidden Place. Lion Song boasts these unnerving vocal effects, which fits the song's focus on seeking clarity with an uncommunicative someone. Black Lake is the album's 10-minute centerpiece, and it's primarily just Björk and strings. That might sound boring at first, but the lyrics are the star of the show here because, Oh. Björk's production touch overall is as deft as ever, and the Hawks and Cloaks work on Family is great, but Arca's co-production fits Björk so well. There's such a strong synergy between them that I thought shined especially bright on tracks like Not Get and Atom Dance. In my view, Vulnicura is Björk's strongest work since Vespertine, which is kind of funny when you consider what that album was about. Vulnicura was considered another high mark in Björk's catalog. Even the botched release got Björk praise and comparisons to other artists who were suddenly releasing albums. In November 2015, we got Vulnicura Strings. Björk's vocals are the same as Vulnicura OG, but the instrumentation is just alternate takes of the strings. Basically, they took something great and distilled it down to its greatest parts. July 2016 saw the public release of Vulnicura Live. Take 2 guesses as to what you think it is, because I've already used up mine. That same summer brought us Björk Digital, a touring exhibit of 360-degree music videos for the album. We would also get a VR version of Vulnicura, but not until 2019 for some reason. Work on a follow-up began almost immediately after Vulnicura's release. The vibe during writing and recording was far more positive and hopeful, what with the whole writing songs about your divorce thing not weighing on the mind. In November 2017, Björk released Utopia. The buzzword this time is Björk's own descriptor. She called Utopia her Tinder album, meaning the music within shows Björk at her most love-struck. But to speak on the sonics, if Vulnicura was the strings album, Utopia is the flute album. Oh, and the Birdsong album. It's as if Björk took the emotional immediacy of Vespertine and paired it with the free-form stylings of Biophilia. And like she did with the strings on Vulnicura, Björk arranged the flute parts, and Arca's once again back to help produce. Utopia certainly starts out strong. Arisen My Senses is another stunning opener, balancing all of the album's sonic threads to create this wonderful rising feeling. First single, The Gate, balances the excitement and anxiety of new love, as well as any past Björk love song. Other lovey-dovey highlights for me were the title track and Courtship. There are exceptions to the upbeat mood that also stick out. Both Tabula Rasa and Sumi deal with the sins of a partner that may weigh on their child, and Björk's desire to mitigate that as much as possible. Overall, it's definitely an experience that crafts space and not structure, and songs can blur together. I suppose that can be a positive if you're seeking total immersion in your listening, but I also try to highlight specific songs when I talk about albums, and Utopia doesn't always feel built for that. Oh, and for an album emphasized by its lighter instruments, it sure does weigh heavy in some places. This is Björk's longest album thus far, and it definitely feels like it in spots. Utopia is good, and I like the time I spent there, but next year I'm taking the kids to Waterslide World.
I really love the way you feel.
You know the story by now. A new Björk album receives high praise, a tour soon follows, etc. That second part was a bit different this time though. Björk toured Utopia for a 4-month European run in spring 2018, but the following year saw an entirely new show called Cornucopia. That show ran through 2019. Björk then announced a new series called Björk Orchestral, which was set to run through 2020, but that got delayed when everyone collectively left the stove on. The shows ran properly starting in fall 2021. Both Cornucopia and Orchestral are actually still running, and both are set to end in Japan this March. But in between the shows, Björk was also busy with other matters. March 2022 saw Björk officially return to acting in Robert Eggers' The Northman. She's only in it for one scene, but she's good in that one scene. And in August 2022, Björk released her most recent album as of this video, Fossora. This one began life back in 2020 and was conceived as a return to Earth after the heavenly head trip of Utopia. The initial idea was for it to be the clarinet album, but Björk later shifted it to be more of an Iceland album. Why do they have to fight? The sonic palette demonstrates this change. The past 2 albums focused on strings, then flutes and birdsongs. Beautiful instruments, but ones that exist towards the higher range of the frequency spectrum. Fossora's production is shifted more towards the lower frequency range. There's the clarinets and other woodwinds, but the beats on this feel much meatier than before. It provides this weighty feel to the songs within, really making you feel like a mushroom man. For example, Atopos marries clarinet parts with this dembo rhythm. them. I feel like this shouldn't work, but there's no way I'm gonna start doubting Björk this far in. This song is great. Other examples in that same vein include Victimhood, the title track, and Fungal City, which boasts a great serpent with feet feature. But if there's a true unabashed highlight to be found, it's the pair of Sorrowful Soil and Ancestress. The former was written shortly before the death of her mother in 2018, and the latter written after. Sorrowful Soil has wonderful choir arranging, reminiscent of Medulla with a dash of Holly Humberstone, and Ancestress keeps the swirling vocals while building up a tender orchestral arrangement. The two songs together are an absolute journey, and they're made even better when you bring in the closer, Her Mother's House, where Björk contemplates her own place now as a mother to a daughter, a cycle of life and death ongoing for eternity. Bring in the Mushroom Men. Time will tell where Fossora sits in the great pantheon of Björk's discography, but even with a fat dose of recency bias running through my veins, I think it's yet another winner. Since we're only a few months removed from Fossora's release, there hasn't been much Björk news since. The only tour dates on her calendar as of now are for this March in Australia and Japan. Hopefully she'll announce more dates for 2023. But if you just need more Björk in your life, check out her Sonic Symbolism podcast, which launched alongside Fossora. Each episode has her going in depth on one of her albums and bringing in collaborators who worked on them. In other words, Björk did her own deep discog dive. If you want to get into Björk, you should absolutely start out with the first 4 records. They are truly peerless. After that, my favorite records were Medulla, Vulnicura, and Fossora. And if you have a favorite Björk song, album, related thing, I would love to know what it is in the comments.